Alright, so we're on page 282, applying linear gradients to strokes. We're going to give an illusion of a photo frame. So with the selection tool, in the tools panel, we're going to select the red stroke. And make sure it's selected because we have our stroke there. And you can even go into your layers to select it that way to practice that. So we're going to change this 10 point to 18 point from our stroke rate. And in the stroke box, we're going to click this to make it visible. And we're going to just change this gradient there. Now right now it's kind of matching this gradient. And we're just applying this to the gradient fill to the stroke. So I'm going to click on the word transform, or your XY up there. So I'm going to pull up my transform. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure this is unlocked. We're going to take that reference point to the center. And we're going to change that width to 14.75. So right now it's 15. And we're going to take that height to 6.25. And right now we're just kind of shrinking in the borders of our stroke. And it kind of fits within the bounds of the artboard, which is pretty cool. So the next we're going to edit the gradient of the stroke because this blue on blue is just not working. So in the gradient panel, we're going to click on the stroke box right here. And we want it to be right there, which is going to be apply a gradient across stroke. Now there's different gradient types, so you notice that we change the appearance of it, as opposed to the whole thing as it would be treated one object, but the stroke is treated very differently. So we're going to double click the blue swatch, and we're going to name it to a border 2, find border 2. It's right there. Take it to swatches and find border 2. Right there, it's that brown one. Click on the outside to kind of select it. Then we're going to do the leftmost color stop here, and we want this to be border 3. So now we have some nice radiation going on. So we're going to position the pointer on the color ramp, which is this guy, between the two color stops to add another, because we're going to add one. And you notice your cursor has a plus sign, it wants to add something. So down the middle, place it between, double click it, and we want this to be border 1 in the control panel. So now we've added, so we have 3 colors for this great gradient to kind of work on. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide this gradient closer to the right and kind of match it with the picture on the bottom of page 283. The next, with the color stop, this one's still selected. We're going to change the location to 80. Right now we're actually pretty close. So if you hadn't done that, we can just make sure it's exactly at 80. And the next steps, we're going to discover how to add more colors to the gradient by dragging copies of color stops to the gradient panel. So pressing Alt or Option key, we're going to drag the middle color stop, which is this guy, to the left closer to the location about 25. So we're holding down Alt and Option, clicking and dragging. Remember making a copy with that click and drag. And there you go. It's about 25%. And then pressing the Alt or Option key, we're going to drag the rightmost border 3 to the left. We want to make this 35. So we're taking this one, Alt or Option, about 35. So now we have, let's kind of zoom in on our stroke. And now it's got some nice kind of wood fill. It's got this depth that frames typically have. And so let's deselect and do a Command S. And I say that frame's looking really good. We started off with a red stroke. We're adding gradients, and we're adding some different colors and gradients to give it that kind of different feel. And you can always just slide this around to see how it looks. To play around with it. So we're on page 285, and we're applying a radial gradient to artwork. So we're going to have that radiant where it kind of starts in the center and pulls out, and this will be reminiscent of geometry. So we're going to do with portholes in the ship. So we're going to select this white ellipse in the Tools panel. We're going to click the Gradient panel to show the Gradient panel, which is here. And we want to choose the black and white gradient for the fill. Right there, and we're going to change it from linear to radial. Now it kind of has this look right here. And so we're going to edit the colors because this isn't really looking too cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a reverse. So it's dark, then white, to see how that looks. And we're going to select the gradient tool in the art panel. So we're just going to zoom in to circle, ellipse. And now we have this line and we have this dotted line. We're going to position the pointer over the gradient annotator bar in the ellipse to reveal the gradient slider. Right here. And we're going to double click the black color stop and we're going to edit this color. So this is a different way to edit color. And we're going to go from the color panel, CMYK. We want the cyan to be 22. No magenta, 3 yellow, and 0 black. So it's a very soft, light color. Notice the annotator starts in the center of the ellipse and points to the right. The dashed circle around the gradient is that shows that it's a radial gradient in a perfect circle. And we're going to position the pointer underneath the gradient slider to the left of the white of the color ramp, and we're going to kind of right around here, looking at that picture on the bottom of page 286, and we're going to click to add a new color, double click, do it from a swatch, and we're looking for window 1. Right there. So we have 3 colors in the color ramp. I'm going to change this location over here, 287, just to be very exact in this panel. Pressing the Alt or Option key, we're going to drag the color stop we just created and to the left. It's like the picture has it just going right there, so and we're going to release the modifier key, so we just made a copy of it. And we're going to change that annotator, click on it here, location to 80. And once the colors are in there, you send the gradient, you can always edit and delete them and add more colors. We're going to double click the leftmost blue, which is this one right here. And we're going to change the location to 70. So now we kind of have this kind of going on. Let's do a Command S to save. And with the gradient tool selected, the ellipse still selected, we have ellipse and gradient tool. We're going to click and drag the diamond shape, this guy right here, to the right, stopping just before the edge of the ellipse. So we're just going to pull this out. And it's kind of readjusting the size of it. Make sure you can see some white on the edges, which we can. And it lengthens the gradient slightly. So in the gradient panel, we're going to make sure the fill box is selected, and we're going to change the aspect ratio which is this guy here, and we're going to change it to 80. And that kind of is sort of the shape of the gradient. So it changes the gradient artwork into elliptical gradient, which makes the gradient better match the shape of this artwork. You could always kind of click and drag this little box here to kind of play around with the settings. So with the gradient tool, click and drag the gradient slider up a little bit to move the gradient in the ellipse. So we're going to kind of click and we can move it up like there. So we kind of have a little white underneath. And with the selection tool, kind of switching over, we're going to double click the scale tool in the tools panel right there. And we're going to change the uniform scale to 60 and click OK. Make sure scale, strokes, and effects is deselected. I'm just trying to match it with the box on page 289 and click OK, and it's made it smaller. And so we're transforming a shape with a gradient, such as scale or rotating. The gradients will also transform as well. So select the selection tool in the tools panel and option drag to make a copy, and we're going to position it to the right of the original. So keyboard shortcut V, Alt or Option, and it looks like going a little bit underneath because the ship kind of lowers a bit. And we're going to do a Command S, and that's the end for video number 2.